Well folks, I said in the dream cottage video I did last year that it doesn't get much more picture postcard than that, but I was clearly wrong, because just look at this. It's like something from a movie set. Hello everyone and welcome back to Mossy Bottom. And before you're too impressed, no, this is not my cottage. We are in fact in County Roscommon on the banks of Lough Boderg, which is connected to the mighty Shannon River. To the north, Carrick-on-Shannon, about 15 minutes drive. To the south, Longford Town, about 20 minutes. And yet this location could not be more rural, surrounded by forestry, lakes and rivers. And the cottage behind me, along with 4.9 acres of land in front of me and substantial outbuildings that you can see to the side, is currently for sale. But if you are interested, you're going to have to act quick, because on Thursday, July the 7th, 2022, it is going to auction with an AMV or advised minimum value of €125,000. Just like in previous episodes in this series, and you should check them out if you haven't already, I'm going to take you on a full tour, inside and out. Talk you through exactly what you get for your money, the outbuildings and land, what you could use them for, growing food, keeping animals, ultimately the life you might lead here. But first let me say, I am in no way affiliated with the owner or agent and receive absolutely no fee or commission for the sale of this or any other property featured on my channel. So what you'll hear throughout this video are my own views, both the good and the bad. I do, of course, make some money through advertising here on YouTube, but the main reason I'm here is because I love exploring properties which have the potential to become small holdings, just like mine up in County Sligo. And if you want to see more of what I do on my own homestead, then take a look at the many other videos featured on this channel, which follow my life here in the west of Ireland. Finally, if you are genuinely interested in buying this property, then you'll find contact details down in the description. Okay folks, introduction's over. Let's go take a look. Let's start with the cottage itself, which, seeing it now in midsummer, is undoubtedly one of the most picturesque little houses I have ever seen. Wow! It is solid stone, of course, with a traditional thatched roof, wooden windows, and has been tastefully restored, I would guess about 20 years ago, there or thereabout. The internal space is roughly divided into two halves. To the right as you enter is a large open plan kitchen, dining and sitting area with a mezzanine overhead, and to the left you have a bathroom and two bedrooms, one of which occupies the attic space. So this is a two-bedroom house, excluding that mezzanine. The open plan sitting kitchen area is spacious and light, but also very cosy like most cottages. It feels warm and welcoming, and definitely somewhere that I personally could spend a lot of time. The first thing that hits you as you walk in here is just how much cooler it is inside than out. It's a hot day today, it's mid-June, and the sun's been out all day. I'm quite hot, but in here it's very, very cool, and that's one of the things about stone cottages. They tend to be cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. I love these ceiling lights. Very cool. I don't know if you can see those. One of the essential things in cottages like this is to keep them well heated, especially in the winter when it's wet. That is how you drive out the moisture from the stone walls, because there's no cavity, there's no damp-proof membrane under the floor or in the walls, so heating is very, very important in old cottages. The reclaimed oak floorboards and wooden windows definitely give the space an authentic feel, and the work needed is really quite superficial. The floor needs repolishing, the walls and windows freshening up, a loose step on that spiral staircase needs fixing, but there is no doubt this is a livable space as it is right now. I've been on some pretty dodgy staircases on my adventures. This is one of the better ones. You do of course have Velux windows that have been fitted on the thatched roof, which is not something you see very often. And it makes a huge difference, definitely, in terms of the light coming in here. One bizarre thing though, for me, is that the windows were put on the northeast side of the house instead of the southwest. I guess maybe that has to do with the outer aspect, how it looks, because it's more discreet on the northeast side. But in terms of letting in light, it would have been better to have those windows on the other side of the roof. You have mains water, heated electrically, a gas stove, and a beautiful big fireplace for those chilly winter evenings. Really, everything to live is right here in this space. I think in the restoration of this building, they've really tried to remain in keeping with the traditional old cottage, because you can see here you've got bespoke wooden sash windows, and that's quite a rarity. Usually these cottages have larger apertures that have been carved out with UPVC windows fitted, and it's just not as authentic. This has the real thing. They are, of course, single glazed though. It's a benchmark, I think, for how this type of cottage, which is long and thin, should be restored. The open plan aspect with the vaulted ceiling, the white boards to reflect light and make it brighter, because of course cottages, one of the downsides is that they're dark. The dual aspect windows, it probably wouldn't originally have had windows on both sides. A lot of them just had windows on the south side, like my cottage. It feels very traditional in here, very quaint, very homely. It's obviously a loved space. Now through to the other end of the house, and this is actually the west end. The other side of the house is divided into a bathroom and 2 bedrooms. The first, on the ground floor, is surprisingly large with a double and single bed. But there is one very noticeable problem. It has a clear smell of damp. And I think this is historic damp, because right now the walls are bone dry. But I suspect in the colder, wetter months that problem would probably resurface. There is a wood-burning stove in this bedroom, but it's not connected up. For the sake of purging that dampness, that's definitely something I would want to do. Either connect this one up or replace it, get a professional in to fit the piping through the chimney, make sure it's safe. Make a huge difference though with the dampness in this side of the house. The attic bedroom, conversely, has absolutely no evidence of damp. It's long and light and would make an excellent children's room, the ceiling height being that bit lower, or even an office or studio space potentially. No prizes for guessing what the owner likes to do or like to do in their free time. This is an outboard engine for a boat, a small boat, and I'll show you that outside in a minute. There is a reason why any owner of this property would want to have a boat, as you will see. It's so fun that I get to explore places like this. There's no one here at the moment at all, it's just me. I've been given the keys and I just get to wander around and look at these beautiful places. One of the great things about this bathroom is that there is space for a bath. The current owner just has a power shower set up, but you could definitely get a bath in here if you rearrange things a bit. Yeah, nice. Internally, this cottage ticks a lot of boxes. It's attractive, inviting, cozy, and unusually light and airy for the most part, thanks to the 3 roof windows, which have been added during that restoration. There are 2 obvious things missing which you might want to add. One is a central heating system. Right now this cottage is heated by a wood burner and electric heaters, which you could certainly improve on. A wood pellet central heating system, or perhaps just a bigger stove with a back boiler connected to radiators, fueled of course by your own timber. More on that to come. And 2 is double glazing for those cottage windows, which need new seals and repairing anyway. Moving outside again, the lime rendered walls are clearly in great condition, but the roof isn't. You can see that there are areas with moss and grass growing in it and signs of unevenness from age. And the ridge, which should be replaced every 10 to 15 years on a thatch, is definitely not in the condition that it should be. Now, that's not to say the roof is about to leak, because there's membrane under there. But replacing that thatch is certainly a job which will need doing in the coming years. And that requires an expert, who sadly don't come cheap, something to factor into your budget. Once upon a time, every cottage in Ireland would have looked like this, even mine up in County Sligo. But these days, thatched roofs on humble houses are quite rare and something I think to treasure. Yes, there are additional maintenance costs with thatch, but it also adds value to the property, so a worthwhile investment in the long run. Okay, time to explore the land, and this property comes with a whopping 4.9 acres, divided roughly into 2 fields, both behind the cottage in that direction. But it's completely overgrown. The good news is, from here at least, all I can see are things like grass, willow herb, buttercup, some dead nettle, meadow sweet, but I can't see any rushes. And rushes would be an indicator that it's very, very wet ground. Let's go in and have a look. I actually forgot my wellies today, so I'm wearing walking boots, so it'll be a good test of just how wet it is as to whether I get wet feet. Here's the folio from landdirect.ie, which crucially shows that the land borders an inlet to Lough Boderg, and I may well be pronouncing that wrong, folks. Apologies to my long-suffering Irish viewers. In other words, you theoretically have lake access from this property. But let's take a look at that on Google Maps. Here you can see Field 1, which is of medium quality and would be suitable, I guess, for vegetable production or animal grazing. And behind it, Field 2, which you can clearly see from the difference in coloration, is a floodplain. There is, along the edge of that field, what I suspect to be an access channel created for the owner's boat. Although the land is overgrown right now, with work you could create a track and a pontoon, or even a private harbour, as the neighbours have, giving you access to that lake. And with it, the entire Shannon waterway, all from your own back garden. How incredible is that? Yes, it requires work to establish, but if the neighbours can do it, why can't you? This is a really nice, sheltered field that is definitely big enough for someone who wants to be self-sufficient, who wants to grow vegetables, fruit bushes and trees, who wants to keep chickens, ducks, pigs, goats. There's enough space, and it's in a great spot. Very private as well. No one is overlooking this land. Okay, I can immediately see, as we get to the end of that first field, that the land is beginning to change. There are more reeds, and I can actually feel that I'm dropping down in terms of the elevation. A lovely little wooded area here. A few more nettles. And yeah, lots more water-loving reeds, which suggests we're getting nearer to the lake. If you need those 4.9 acres in their entirety to be productive grassland for accommodating horses, donkeys, or other livestock, then this isn't the property for you. But if you can live with less usable land, around 2 acres in that first field and around the cottage, then the payoff is private lake access. Okay, I'm now walking through the second field nearest the lake, and this is definitely part of a floodplain. Ireland is a funny place, you know, folks. On a day like this in mid-June, when the birds are singing and the sun is out, it's warm and dry and so unbelievably green. It feels like paradise, this country, absolute paradise. But in winter, or even in the autumn, when the land is more grey and drab and the sun refuses to come out for weeks on end, it's a different place entirely. It's definitely a country of extremes in terms of how it makes you feel. Okay, I'm getting too hot now, folks. I need to get back to that cool stone cottage to have some sandwiches and strawberries, which I've packed for the day. Around the house, there is a perimeter of mature trees which enclose a lawn and a small apple orchard. It feels very enclosed and private, but let's talk about the elephant in the room, that road. Yes, it's close, and yes, when a car drives by you definitely hear it, but you don't see it, nor does it see you. And if this thatched cottage with this much land was at the end of a private lane, it would certainly command a higher price, something to bear in mind, I think. I just love this overhanging thatch. I think one of the best things about thatch is that it makes a building feel cozier. It's like you're wrapped up in a big thick blanket. It's very snug and warm feeling. Finally, the outbuildings, of which you get quite a lot, a footprint of about 160 square meters in fact. But there is a catch. All of these outbuildings are in need of major restoration. The corrugated steel is rusted through, the rafters are rotten, the stone walls are in places collapsing, and, well, there are no floors or windows. But if you're handy, then there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't turn these buildings into a usable space, be it for animals, chickens, ducks, pigs, goats, donkeys, even a horse stable, or a workshop, or even a storage space, or I guess a combination of all those things. There is enough outbuilding space to do that. But again, factor in the restoration cost in your budget. Let's have a look inside. Yeah, you can see this is the original wooden lintel, and that's just turned to absolute powder. So if you want to make use of the outbuildings at this property, you're going to have to put some time and labour or money into their restoration, because they're not in a very good condition right now. Not sure how well the camera will pick up the inside of this outbuilding because it's quite dark, but it's just being used for storage right now. Definitely lots of potential. Again, the roof, it needs replacing. Functionally it's okay now, especially in the summer for storing things. You can see some leftover reeds from the thatched roof, which is quite cool. And some furniture and roofing and timber and things being stored in here. But if this was mine, I'd definitely replace this roof. You can see there's quite a few big holes where lots of rain and damp will definitely get in, especially in the wetter months. For me personally, having outbuildings like this is important because I live on a homestead with pigs, chickens and other livestock, as well as trying to grow my own food, so space to store tools, equipment, produce and to house animals, particularly over the winter, is vital. But if you're more interested in the house, and why not, as was clearly the case with the current owner, then you could simply leave these outbuildings as they are now. There are no plug sockets anymore, but you could certainly restore that if you wanted to. This is quite a big outbuilding. This would have been where they stored the turf, and you can see the remains of that here. Turf being peat that's been dried and is used then as a traditional heating material to burn in the stove. There's not much of it left. I don't think the current owner is burning it anymore, but that's what this building probably would have been used for originally. And finally, behind those outbuildings is an apiary. I count 5 or 6 beehives. Now bear in mind that that land is not included with the cottage, but it's quite appealing, I think, to have a neighbour who practices beekeeping. A great opportunity to learn a new skill, and of course, lots of pollinators for anything that you grow here. Speaking of which, I can see the neighbour beyond that field also grows their own veg. Look at all those raised beds. It's amazing the things you spot when you fly over people's gardens with a drone. But for me, having like-minded neighbours, it's an important thing. You're definitely not going to be isolated. In fact, you might even find a ready-made community right on your doorstep. Ireland really is great for that. Okay, it's time, folks, for the part you all love, my self-sufficiency score, focusing on food, water, warmth, shelter, access, and income. And remember, this is not about comparing the cottage and land here to a modern house, but instead asking the question, just how self-sufficient could you theoretically be living here, within each of those categories? First, food. Well, there is an apple orchard, so that's a start, and if you lowered the trees bordering that road, then that orchard would be more productive. There's also about 1.5 acres of usable pasture, which is relatively flat, sheltered, and, based on the native plants I can see growing in it, of reasonable quality. You could grow everything I grow at Mossy Bottom, my homestead, and more, because it's about 50% larger. There's space for polytunnels, potatoes, soft fruits, and of course livestock, certainly poultry, ducks, chickens, turkeys, potentially pigs and goats too. And if you're clever, you might even be able to make use of the 3-acre floodplain, potentially for water-tolerant species like ducks or geese. Not forgetting the lake in which you could fish. 5 out of 5 for food. Water next. Well, you have mains water here, as well as a stream running right through your land, connecting to a freshwater lake. 5 out of 5. Warmth, and this is where my rating system invites controversy, because I personally am able to heat my home just by coppicing and managing my own 1-acre hedgerows. But I have to acknowledge not many people are used to doing that anymore, so my ratings, well, they come as a surprise, I think, to a lot of you. And of course, most people have bigger houses than the caravan which I live in, requiring more energy to heat. But there are a lot of trees here along the hedgerows, and another 3 acres of floodplain in which you could plant a lot more for fuel, especially willow. No ready-made forest though. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 for warmth. Next, shelter. And unlike the previous property in the green pastures of County Kerry, which was a ruin, this thatched cottage, restored in recent decades, is completely livable. Of course, there's work to be done. The roof definitely needs replacing. The windows need modernising. The walls repainting. That damp issue solving. But you could move in immediately and work on those things progressively. So it has to be a 5 out of 5 for shelter. Access next. And of course, you're connected directly to a road. But that driveway is rather tight and certainly only large enough for a single car. It would benefit, I think, from gravelling and perhaps widening a tad. But there's no risk of flooding and relatively easy access for building materials and other deliveries, which is one of the great advantages to being directly on the road, unlike at Mossy Bottom, my home, which is down the end of a kilometre-long boreen, too narrow for anything larger than a transit van to fit down, which really can be a nightmare at times for me. These are things you definitely have to consider if there's work to be done. 4 out of 5 for access here. Finally, income. And this category asks the question, could this property provide a way to make money self-sufficiently, such as providing guest accommodation, selling produce, or services? And I think this is important to anyone who invests their life savings potentially moving to a remote rural property like this, but doesn't necessarily have a way to earn money and pay for that life thereafter. Well, of course you can sell produce, and market towns in which you could do that are not far away. But there isn't space for guest accommodation unless you turn the cottage itself into a holiday rental, which, being thatched, would, I think, be very popular, especially if access to that lake via a boat, which you could provide, was included in the price. But then where would you live? There is, like in 99% of the country, 4G internet access here. Yes, I checked. Good enough to stream in HD. So if you work from home, there's no reason why you couldn't do so here. I'm going to give it 2, bordering on a 3 out of 5 for potential income. So, who would this beautiful thatched cottage with almost 5 acres of mixed quality land in the heart of Ireland suit? Well, someone who values that picture postcard ready to move in home above all else. Someone for whom a characterful home, even if it comes with some compromises, out-trumps other considerations. Someone who can tolerate being close to a quiet country road, but also values that lake access and has a plan for the land. It would definitely work for someone aspiring to be self-sufficient like me, especially if you're handy and can take on projects like restoring those outbuildings yourself. This property isn't as remote as many of the others I've featured, Carrick-on-Shannon is just 15 minutes away, Longford Town 20, and you have close neighbours. So community is ready and waiting here. And the cottage itself has 2 bedrooms with the potential for 3 if you include that mezzanine. So definitely large enough for a small family. And I have to say, I think kids would absolutely love it here, especially during months like this, when the Emerald Isle really sparkles in all its majesty. I can just see them floating about on that lake in a little dinghy. Finally, if I were to buy this cottage and land, what would I do here? Well, I'd definitely restore those outbuildings and use them to support a small holding, as they would have been used originally. And I'd turn that Sweet Meadow into a productive field with a polytunnel or 2, surrounded by vegetable crops, chickens, ducks and other livestock. I'd create a gravel track all the way down to a private pontoon on the inlet to that lake. And I'd save up to buy a nice little boat to moor there. I'd get to know that beekeeper next door and perhaps even invest in my own hives. And I'd probably plant willow and keep geese on that floodplain, after doing plenty of research, of course. In short, I'd live in much the same way that I'm living now, aiming to be about 60% self-sufficient. And what a life that is, if it's your dream, as it was and still is mine. And that brings us to the end of this video, folks. If you are interested in purchasing this thatched cottage in County Roscommon, then I wish you the best of luck. Remember though, it goes to auction on July 7th, so if that date has passed, then I'm afraid it's too late. Some lucky bugger will be living here already. What a treat it has been to explore. I really hope you enjoyed the tour. And for those of you wondering how I find these properties, well, I look on the internet. It's that simple. Daft.ie and myhome.ie are 2 of the best places you can start. Thank you as always for watching, subscribing and supporting the channel. From me here at Sweet Meadow Cottage as the sun sets in the distance, to you wherever you are in the world, take care and bye for now. Born in a Quaker town where folks worked good and hard for the ones they loved and got above. Each day they punched their card, and when evening came back home again, they'd rest a while and say, "'Tis a hard old life, but for kids and wife we'll work as another day." When the sun rose low, back to work they'd go, singing on their way. For job and home to call our own, we'll work as another day.